Someone
And
want to
then,
share their screen? Share the document.
Okay, hi everyone. We are group number 8, and my name is Jan Emercan Ersoydan, and we are going to be talking about the description of Weick's process of enactment, selection, and retention to understand the inputs of enormous information that organizations deal with every day. And we will provide an example of how our school, University of New Mexico's main campus, deals with these kind of strategies to make sense of the information on our campus. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so our chapter was chapter 10, and in chapter 10, the communicational information that we gathered from it, it can be related to mass messaging in campus safety services that we use on campus. An example would be like Lobo alerts. And in chapter 10, some quotations or some informational context that we're taking from that chapter would be like a good quote would be members of the organization engage in joint activity to make information received more understandable. When they send alerts, they kind of want to make sure that they're kind of simple and they get the point across, fast and at a good point. And it also relates on how human organizations engage in information on processing to reduce equivocality of information. And that's basically like the limitation of having one description of something being multiple like points. So basically when they send an alert, they don't want to have miscommunication or have misassumptions about one thing. So they kind of keep it simple to not confuse people.
and then some of the assumptions that are there, human organization exists in all information environments. They depend on information for internal and external sources to function effectively and accomplish goals. The information an organization receives differs in terms of equal velocity, sorry if I mispronounced that, ambiguity, meaning of information received may be complicated, uncertain, and unpredictable. It may be the engine that moves humans to organize. Human organizations engage in information processing to reduce vocality of information. Members of organization engage in joint activity to make information received more understandable. For our example, would be the urgent Lobo alert update. For example, would be 0915. It'll tell the time 1111 and it'll say what happened. For example, assault with the knife by UNM, where the location is. It'd be a bookstore, a male, the height, what he was wearing, what he looked like, and what direction that he'd be going on. And also in the chapter, he focuses on the process of organizing rather than the structure of organization. He equates organizing with information processing. His model of organization describes how people make sense of the confusing verbal inputs, which that means it is social processing theory.
To elaborate on that, I want to go to a direct page in the textbook. Page 167, there's a little kind of chartish sort of thing. It's just some bullet points. It explains the organization of how things work and why things are organized and the way it makes an impact on the peoples and their assumptions. The quote is, OIT is one way of explaining how organization makes sense in information that is confusing or ambiguous. It confuses the process of organizing members in an organization to manage information rather than a structure of organization itself. The number of organization is assumptions underlie the theory. And essentially through that, it has 3 bullet points. The first bullet point talks about human organization exists in an information environment. So like, we all go seeking out our information, things like the Lobo web or like newspaper columns or just advertisements you see on like bulletin boards and stuff like that, just walking around campus. That information is closed in its own little vacuum space that we're able to find. Next bullet point is the information an organization receives is different in terms of like how it's received. So like not everybody's going to receive the same point from like everything. If it's like too complicated, if I'm like, oh well, there's a blue something something, somebody's going to think, oh, this one thing is blue, but like instead another person might receive it like it's a different part of the object is blue. It's just, if it's not well communicated, they're not going to understand. And the third point is human organizations engage in information processing to reduce equivocality of information. So that basically just means the organization, basically it's like the people and how they're receiving it and how they're spreading that information that makes it easier for them to understand it. The quick and easy access is what helps us the most.
Right. Yeah. And then also we also got a great definition from a dictionary, and it was I also quoted that dictionary, and we'll link it into the paper, but the definition is equivocality is the state of quality of being ambiguous in meaning or capable of double interpretation. So we really want to limit that like point of people perceiving it in multiple different ways. It has to be simple. Simple and fast if you want to have it in mass forms of communication for everyone to perceive it in one way.
Also, it is very important for corporations to be able to understand ways of simply reducing the amount of information, because the amount of information they get are very, very big. Like, it's so big that there's nowhere to explain big, and they must have certain channels that managers, co-workers, common workers, and owners, they all need to have a separate kind of channel, but they need to be simplified in order for the equivocality, or in other words, ambiguity for the information to be passed on simpler terms, and for it to be received by everyone at the same time.
I think that's all our points that we needed to cover.